Hello, namaskaram to all the viewers around the world. I am Subramaniam, accompanied by Sri Anand, and we welcome you all to our yet another discussion from Sambash. Sambash is an open community of like-minded Indians from different spheres of life, from IT to accounting, from students to professors to retired seniors living in Europe. We come together to discuss the real Indian cash, culture, art, societal issues, and history. We help our followers develop a better understanding of Indian culture, and today we are doing a follow up to our previous talk on COVID's impact on Indian economy. This time, the impact and the response across the world. Let me now allow Sri Anand to give us a brief about why we are here today.
Thanks, Subbu. Uh, so many things seems to be going wrong in the world. First, global trade wars, then COVID, and now world's most powerful nation in protest. It's tempting to throw your hands up in despair. We hear immigration is out of control, that imposing high import tax on goods will cause the economy to plummet. Saving the environment means sacrificing people's job. But we will become extinct. These are some of the most horrifying cacophony of doomsday scenarios. And what makes it worst is that we often don't know whom to believe. Instead of engaging in substantial debate, politicians seems to be screaming over each other. Amid this hubbub, we occasionally see some economists popping up on TV and podcast making dire prediction criticizing the policy of one another. Economists seem intrinsically partial, aligned to business interest or political ideology. As a layperson, we don't always understand what they do or how they reach their conclusions. To make matters worse, the opinion of academic economists can seem counterintuitive or illogical because their views don't match up with what we are told by politicians. The fact that people don't trust economists is problematic. Why? Because only they can give us very important information about how to solve some of the world's most critical problems. That's why we are here today, aren't we, Subbu?
Yes, Anand, as rightly put, we need to seek an economist for the answer. Today, being Teachers' Day, let me take this opportunity to invite our economist teacher, if I'm allowed to say this, Srinivas Thiruvadanthai ji. Sir, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, sir, let me take this opportunity to quickly introduce you to our audience. Our guest, Dr. Srinivas Thiruvadanthai, Director of Research at Jerome Levi Forecasting Center, a frequent guest on Bloomberg TV and radio, author for Financial Times, Alphaville, Asian Age, and co-authored op-eds for The Guardian and Livement, and a contributor to Swarajya magazine. Welcome, sir, once again to the Sambash discussion series, and happy Teachers' Day.
Thank you.
Sir, we jump into the first question, the most hot topic, as many has been discussing about this, about India. Recently, India is in news for showing a record GDP contraction of 23.9%, which is worst since 1996. And it is also looks scary when we compare it to the other 60 countries that has released. If I'm not wrong, they are around minus 12%. We also saw a recent discussion about this on how we calculate this. So let us not jump into this, like how is it being compared to the US figures? They annualize the quarterly figure and all that. And many people, many experts are also suggesting from reducing the tax and easing out the regulatory framework to boost the MSMEs. So before jumping into all that, let us first try to understand as a layman why we got here, why we got into this mess, and what has made us got into this. Aren't we anticipating this? What did the government miss?
There are two things. We got into this because we shut down the economy, basically. And actually, India's lockdown was one of the more stringent ones in terms of how many activities were shut down, right? So in that sense, and it was nationwide as well. So that's why it is expected that you would have a very big decline. And in one form or the other, we have had this rolling lockdown up after the first 3 weeks, which we extended subsequently, and then some relaxations. But overall, we are now in since we started on March 25th, if I remember correctly, 24th or 25th. So April, May, June, July, August, five months have gone. Nearly half the year has gone, right? So that's why it's such a big decline. Whether that action should have been taken at that time. In fact, people are saying the government was not being stringent enough, right? So I don't think that there's a debate about whether that action should have been taken at that time. And if you look at even then, the cases have been consistently increasing, right? That's number one. So what would have happened if we had not done this is our healthcare systems, and we don't have the same hospital bed capacity per person that the Western countries have. So we would have just gotten overwhelmed. People would have been dying in the streets. As it is, I'll tell you a personal thing. A classmate of mine from college in India recently died in Chennai from COVID because they couldn't get him to a good hospital. So, it is a serious thing. But one thing that this has achieved is if you look at the total number of cases, they are rising, but if you look at the active cases, they have started to fall off. So we are able to manage to some extent without overwhelming our healthcare system. Otherwise, we would have several 100,000, maybe a million, maybe more dead, right? So that's what we have managed to do. It always comes down to this question ultimately. And this is an uncomfortable question. People will say it's unethical, immoral. The question ultimately comes down to between lives and livelihood. And, at some point, you're starting to hurt livelihoods enough that it will do long-term damage. And I think that's when we start to shift away toward opening up. I will make one more quick point on this. See, COVID is such a disease that it requires a massive cooperation from the people. Aside from whatever stringent government actions, whatever actions the government takes, there still needs to be cooperation unless the government is willing to shoot people at sight, like in China and Wuhan, whatever they were doing initially. There is no way that kind of enforcement can be done in India. So what you have to do is to have some self-discipline from people. And the problem with this in India is actually, I am surprised at the amount of discipline 80 to 90% of the people have shown. But it is the 10% to 10 to 20% who do not show the discipline that endanger everybody. So whenever I see videos, I'm looking at people, 8 out of the 10 people are wearing their mask, but the 2 people are not wearing masks when they're very close distance, they're talking, shouting, obviously this is spreading. And these are people with, vegetable vendors and things like that, you're seeing them on an everyday basis. And naturally, that's why it is spreading. It's not spreading like wildfire, but it is spreading. There should have been near 100% compliance is the only way to control this disease. And that kind of discipline we somehow are not showing. That's really the problem.
Thanks. I think that explains everything about this. So talking further about the negative GDP growth in India, what do you think the government should do now for a recovery path? What they have missed, and then what they have to do it now to make it?
I think first thing is we need to open up. Okay, we need to open the economy. And now that we have bought some time in terms of being able to tackle the effects if the cases start to rise, we need to open, number one. Number two, what we need to do is they've already given some relief for small businesses and for for low-income workers and things like that. We should extend those reliefs. Plus, we need to expand on those things. Right now, the economy is suffering from massive lack of demand because a lot of people who have either lost their jobs or they lost their income, they will want to save money, right, to build up their balances. So how do you do that? So there's not going to be enough demand. So you just need to keep one thing, a lot of infrastructure spending, bring it up. So that way you're pumping money into the economy straight away. And especially to the low income people who will spend most of it. They can extend, they can, for as far as loans are concerned, they can extend this, what is it called, mudra, because banks are not going to lend in this environment. Okay, so this is for the small businesses. For the larger or medium or larger businesses which are outside the purview of Mudra, what they can do is they can ask the banks to lend, but RBI will completely fund it or take up the entire risk. Okay, so that way, banks are not in the hook. Basically, the government has to spend a lot right now in one form or the other. They have to spend a lot and provide guarantees for a lot of activities. Okay, they need to do this for maybe a year or maybe two before they nurse the economy back to health, and after that, things will be fine. But if you don't do it right now, this is like not giving IV to the patient. The patient will die. That's the problem. You cannot at this point say, I'm worried about the patient having too much sugar or something like that. This is not the time to be worried about it.
Yeah, that's good. So you mean to say that we need to spend a lot in capex at the moment, rather than bailing out through operations and other thing, operational expense, the crunch in working capital and other things. So what you're suggesting is put a lot of capex expenditure by the government, right?
I think capex is ideal, but I do think that you do need to support some amount of operating expenditures as well. Okay, but I would say indirectly by giving funding, number one, for smaller businesses, and the number two, what I would do is I would give more money to people via the direct benefit transfers, so that people spend that money. That way, businesses get the revenue, right? See, there are two ways to support businesses. One, they have no revenue, okay, and you are supporting them by keeping their paying their salaries or whatever, right? That is one. The other is you ensure that they get revenue by giving people money to spend, so that they get the revenue, right? But all that will be useless unless we restart, right? I mean, I can give all the money to people, but unless the restaurants are open, there's just not going to be the jobs. There's not going to be the revenue. I think we need to do that first.
Correct. I think we need to increase the demand side,
yes,
keeping the supply side intact. I think,
yeah,
because we are already oversupplied, it seems.
Yeah.
And continuing with the same question, what would be the shape of recovery? Can you describe what the recovery path would look like if you want to use an alphabet letter to describe the shape, such as V, W, L, or U, or even a reverse checkmate? So what do you think?
I think it'll be the thing is, people are now getting excited. I'm seeing some of these numbers are coming out, like the auto sales are up 20%.
Right.
People are getting excited about it. There's a huge pent-up demand. People have not been able to buy anything for the last 3-4 months, and suddenly 1 month you've released it. There is going to be a huge surge. It shouldn't be mistaken for what is called a V-shaped recovery, right? I think to think that okay, everything is fine, it's coming back, would be the biggest mistake in policy terms. What we will have is what I call the inverse square root, right? If you mirror image of the square root, so you get a recovery, and then it starts to fade away. That's because you're doing the pent-up demand, and then the pent-up demand fades, you will go away. That's when the economy needs the support from government policy. It's very important to support them. Once you support it past that, so whether it's going to be a V or an inverse square root or W or whatever, it will ultimately depend on what kind of policy support we do. So our destiny is in our hands in that sense.
And what do you think? How much time will it take, I think, to do this recovery path? Like,
I think we are looking at least late 2021, 22. Before the private economy is in some shape to come back. It's a lot of damage. It's a lot of damage. So
okay.
we are talking about a year and a half of support, maybe even 2 years, something like that is what we should plan for.
Okay. And what do you think would be the monkey wrench here?
Monkey wrench is again, one, the COVID cases again start to reaccelerate, in which case, we are caught in a really hard place. That is number one. Number two, we start to not do enough policy. Number two is the risk. Policy is the biggest risk. For COVID, policy risk. Number three, there is huge global turmoil for whatever reasons. I mean, there are lots of global reasons for global turmoil. I'm not an expert on geopolitics, but I just read a brilliant piece from my friend. It's only for private circulation. Anantha Nageswaram, with whom I have often, he's on Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, and he often writes with whom I have collaborated on Mint. So there are lots of quite a glaring time, quite a dangerous time we live in.
Sir, yeah, we're talking about this monkey wrench. Do you think the US politics is going to play a major role? Especially, and also people are talking more about this multilateral economy, the end of globalization. So also give a hint on that.
It is tricky. The politics is certainly tricky. I'm not a political expert, but there are two issues. The race is a close one, and it will be contentious. Mainly because it's going to be close in some of the states which matter, right? So the counting is going to be an issue because there are going to be mail-in ballots, right? Unlike in India, there is no such thing called an independent body called the Chief Election Commissioner in the US, right? So there is no independent body. So the mail-in ballots have to be counted by the local, in each individual state government, which will be under the political authority of that, whichever party is there at the time, right? Which doesn't mean it will be completely tampered with. I'm not saying that. But that's one thing. Second thing is, I do not know what mechanism is there. I have to study it. What mechanism is there to ensure that the mail-in ballots are legitimate ones, are not legitimate ones, there's not multiple people, one person voting multiple times. There's all kinds of issues. Basically, the US doesn't have an election machinery that is made for modern times. It is sad, but if you guys, many of you are probably too young to remember in 2000 that in the Gore versus Bush election, they were talking about hanging pieces of Chad from the ballot card. It's just absurd what kind of system they have. And, it's not an independent body, statutory independent body like the Chief Election Commissioner in India. So there is always the issue of bias. And if it comes to that kind of counting issue, right, then the problem comes up with who's counting, who's not counting, and it will be caught up in courts, which means we may have a lot of uncertainty for a long time before the issue is resolved. And may not be resolved to everybody's satisfaction. That's another problem. So yes, there is significant political risk in that sense.
And how this will affect India, the US elections?
Well,
what do you
think of it this way, right? The US financial markets have global influence. No matter how well your country is doing, it doesn't matter. If the US financial markets are in turmoil, then there will be problem in the Indian financial markets as well. And there will be capital flight, there will be all kinds of issues. The second problem is if there is a global economic problem, our exports will continue to be hit, right? So another problem. The third thing which you guys talked about, the multilateral issue, I think that's a more longer term issue. That is a challenge insofar as how we manage alliances and how we manage the politics and the trade in this new world. It'll be a challenge, but it is something that we have to work on, and that's something that certainly is going to happen. It's bound to happen in one form or the other. It's a transition which may take many years, but it's that I feel fairly secure that we are going toward a new world in that sense on globalization and trade.
Correct. Moving on with the next question is, as an investor, I always invest in stock exchange. So as the COVID-19 outbreak spread in March, stock market prices plunged, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then in a move that seemed irrational to some observers, market bounced back. Record unemployment, global health crisis, with all these things, protest despite the world we live in, stock market or beating record highs, crazy or disaster. So what exactly your take on that? Why do you think, is it some bubble which needs to be busted now, or do you think that it's already time?
No, if you look at it from that, let's say mainly from the US perspective, but it applies to many other countries. There are two things, right? One is in the US, the policy support and the reaction has been very aggressive, right? So, and that's number one. Number two, the COVID combined with the policy support, COVID has catalyzed changes or accelerated changes that were already going on that favors big businesses, especially big tech, even more, right? So, for example, as people shut down, already there was an anyway move away from online buying physically in the retail store to online. Right now, that just accelerated. So you could see Amazon's sales just shot up in the second quarter during COVID shutdown. Yeah. That's number two. Number six, it's not just Amazon. All the internet companies benefited from work from home. Right, people started using Zoom, for example, but also people are using Microsoft Teams. They're using WebEx, all kinds of things. So there is huge explosion in demand for work from home, which benefits tech companies again, right? So the combination of this is why you're seeing the tech companies do well and the stock market do well, which is heavily driven by tech, right? The businesses that are suffering, they're not directly related to the stock market because they're not listed companies. My local grocery store or, the Kirana store closed down. They're not listed in the stock market. So it's like, COVID has created a situation where the haves have become even more powerful. The winners have become even more bigger winners. And they happen to be listed in the stock market. That's the main reason. The Indian situation is a little bit different, but even in India, you can see that large businesses, to some extent, have been able to manage it better with work from home and things like that, especially in IT, where it was already possible, but it's even more possible now, compared with, if you're running a local restaurant and who are the sufferers, your local restaurant, the dhaba wala and the guy who used to sell pani puri on the street, those are the guys who are suffered the most, right? I mean, they're not listed in the stock market. Now, is it possible for the stock market and the economy to do well, even as vast majority of businesses are shutting down? No, probably not, but that's a longer term thing. And for now, that's why you see this dichotomy.
Sometimes,
sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Andy, no problem.
Sometimes I also wonder why the bank stocks is going up, because bank has to come down, right? Because of these things. So really have no idea. It's crazy sometimes to see all these things.
Right, but overall they're still well below their peak. Whereas if you look at the tech stocks, they're at new peaks, right? So they're not I mean, I don't know why. It's hard to say whether reasonable or unreasonable, but they are where I think the bank stocks are not absurd in that sense.
I think I'm looking at India. I think that's why maybe.
No, Indian situation is a little bit more tricky. You are right. There is going to be a big increase in NPAs for sure. But I think the assumption is that they will get some government relief in some form or the other.
Okay.
Okay, sir, my question was of course, about the bank, as Andy has already asked. Also on the real estate sector, even considering US, one of my friend who almost bought a house in March, and he was expecting the prices to drop because of COVID, and he didn't register, and he got his advance back. But what the irony is, he's seeing the situation as it is actually going up. The prices of real estate prices are going up in US.
So, two things are happening, right? A lot of the urban areas, people are moving out because of COVID, right? So, urban and semi-urban areas, people are moving out to suburbs and even to what is called exurbs and rural areas, right? So, when you move out, suddenly, if you look at current US population, there are like 30-40 million households in urban areas. That's a lot of people. I mean, even if 10% are moving, 3 million, 4 million, you're talking about a lot of sudden demand, right? Which cannot be immediately accommodated because there are not that many homes and you're not building at that rate. I mean, an annual rate of building 1.5 is a strong level of building. So, and there are not that many vacant homes. So that's what is driving up. It's the short-term spurt of people trying to shift out of the cities, and that trend will be there for a couple of years at least, before it's absorbed and COVID goes away or who knows if it doesn't go away and there's a permanent change in I think there will be a combination of it. COVID may go away, but there might still be a permanent shift of people away from cities. Not everybody, but there will be some 10% shift away from cities, not 90-80% shift. And I think at least 20% of the jobs that used to be in offices will become work from home. Not all, again, not all, but 10 to 20% will certainly become. And that's enough to mean that you need 10% less office space, 10% less people living in the cities. That's all you need. People are thinking everybody is going to go back to work from home and then everybody is going to go back. That doesn't have to happen. It's not like everybody who's doing work from home is going to be doing work from home. All you need is 10 to 20% of them doing work from home permanently. That's all. That's a major shift. 10 to 20% is a lot.
I think that will also have some effect on the utilities company, I think, right? The electricity suppliers and the gas suppliers, they will also have some cut.
That I have not done analysis. So you won't have office buildings probably needing as much, but homes will need, right? If you're living in the day through the day in the home, you probably need to heat and air condition the home through the day. That's a tricky one. I think it will be less. You're right, probably, because office buildings do take up a lot. Yes, I probably will mean, yes, less demand for utilities as well.
Okay, thank you. Going on to the next question is about Warren Buffett and US economy. There are two lines from Warren Buffett which makes me think. Okay, the US debt isn't going to be repaid, it's going to be refunded, and then you better own something rather than debt. Buffett explains that when the government can just keep on printing money to pay their own debt, it's laughable to think they will ever default. He says the trick is to keep borrowing in your own currency. So if money will keep being printed out of thin air, what does that mean for your investment assets and saving?
you know, uh, I think the reality of the situation is, if you look at the US or UK or any country like that, right, which has had a long history of government debt, there has never been a period in which government has completely repaid its debt. It is like, think of the government as an ongoing concern, like a going concern in companies, right? A going concern is you're assuming that it is going to be forever life. So it is laughable to say that I never completely pay off all my suppliers. No, at any point in time, you always have suppliers credit, right? And you always have customer credit. Customers on credit and suppliers on credit. You always have it. I never repay my customers. So what happens is the company grows bigger and bigger and bigger. The supplier credit also grows bigger and bigger and bigger. It's never repaid. You repay the old dues, but you have even bigger dues, right? If you're growing, it's the same thing. I mean, unless you expect the government is going to collapse and the United States is not going to exist, it doesn't matter. It will always grow. Old debt will be paid away, but even more new debt will be issued. So that's not the issue. What it really means is, can we project future revenues path and future spending path in such a way that it will justify today's debt? And this is a futile exercise in my view. It doesn't matter. This is because the future stream of revenue will depend on how fast the economy is growing. If the economy is doing well, you will have large revenues. If you do not have, you will not have large revenues, and you'll have large spending because there will be a lot of people unemployed and all that stuff, right? So the real bet is, how is the economy going to do? All this is just complete sideshow. It is not relevant at all in terms of thinking about the thing. Due respect to Buffett, who is obviously hugely more successful than 99.99% of humanity. I don't want to say, but in this respect, I mean, that is not the relevant question. The relevant question is, what's the economy doing? And the important question here is the government there to protect and save the economy when it needs it most, right? If it is there, like the US did in COVID, immediately after COVID, then it is telling you that you should be taking a bet on the US as a whole. right? Because it's there to protect. But beyond that, I don't see any other point, because it's not that you want to buy other assets. You have to buy the other assets because you expect the economy to do well. That's all that matters. They won't just go up because my government is printing money. They will go up only if they have reason, there is good economic reasons for it.
Yeah, yes, Srini, I have a question here. Isn't is the revenue or the current economy, are those the key things that play the role? Isn't the currency also plays an important role? Because we also hear that U.S. currency is at times overvalued in global perspective, and there is always a fight in the recent trends, especially with cryptocurrencies as they are booming up, and they want to make sure the US dollars are they are claiming that US dollar is overrated, and hence we want to move to the cryptocurrency, especially the asset-based cryptocurrencies. Or you talk about the DeFi, the new trend is the DeFi.
You know, at the end of the day, why do people accept the US dollar? They accept the US dollar because somebody else accepts the US dollar. And why does somebody else accept the US dollar? At the end of it, it all comes down to the fact that the US is a very large market, and every company wants to sell in that market. Correct? So when you sell in the US market, you end up getting dollars, right? Then what do you do with those dollars? Correct? That's the quick question. Now, if you did not like the dollars, why would you sell in the first place? Right? For instance, if some country is selling something in Indonesia or India or something like that, they won't accept rupee as a payment. They want a dollar as a payment. Right? They will take you as a customer for sure, but they don't want to take customer as rupee. Right? So why do they accept the dollar? They're happy to take the dollar. That's what it means, because they know that they can easily give it to somebody else. So why does that situation persist? Because the dollar has been there for a long time, and the US has been a responsible country for a long, long time. And that's the reason. Now, the dollar can have a lot of fluctuation. Remember, when the euro started, it started at $17 to the euro in 1999, right? Then it fell to 83 cents in 2001, 2002. I'm forgetting the exact date, around 2002 maybe, okay? Then it went all the way to 160 in 2008, when people said the dollar is gone, and then it fell again back to 105, a couple of years. I mean, this year 107, but a few years ago 105, and it's back now near 120. So there will be a lot of fluctuation in the dollar. That's different from saying that the dollar will lose global acceptability. That will happen only when the US is not a large market where people can sell to. At the end of the day, in any business, if you look at it, what is the most difficult thing? One is coming up with a winning product, but the second one is getting acceptability and being able to sell, right? That's why salesman job is a hard job. Marketing jobs are hard jobs. You have to be able to sell. You have to get other people to fork up the money to buy your product, give you the money.
Yeah, got that.
So,
But one moment, Andy. So your opinion on cryptocurrency, okay, trying to replace the US dollars. I know that's a very, optimistic statement. But anyway, what is your opinion on that?
I had by the way, on this, I had the podcast with Kevin Kelly. If you can, he's a cryptocurrency expert. In fact, I had answered some of these questions, but I'll answer anyway. But if anybody interested in more detail, they can Google it. Okay. So here is a key issue with cryptocurrencies, that they are making a mistake. The cryptocurrency boosters, they're making a mistake. The first thing to remember is, for any currency there is a network aspect, right? Which I spread to the dollar. Why do you accept dollar? Because somebody else accepts dollar. For a network effect to spread, okay, it needs to be widely used. So for that, first step is that it should be widely used in transactions. Correct? Only when it starts to then it gets a network acceptability. Once it gets a network acceptability, then you can go and point out and say, hey, look, it preserves value better than the dollar. Okay, because it is in the long run, it is going to be, the supply is going to be limited, unlike the dollar, which keeps growing. But they are starting it backwards. They're saying its supply is going to be limited, therefore you should use it. But if its supply is going to be limited, its price is going to go up, I won't use it, right? I will want to hold it. If you guys remember, I don't know many of it. Again, this is something that when I was growing up, there used to be a 20 paisa coin. People don't even know that it used to be a gold. It used to be a brass, I think, brass or bronze 20 paisa coin, or at least a coating with a Lakshmi on it. It used to be very beautiful, actually. So a lot of people used to hold that for religious reasons. They would use it for this puja and things like that, right? And as money value kept going down, the actual value of the coin itself became quite valuable, and that thing went out of circulation because people hoarded it and kept it at homes. It went out of circulation. You can't find it. Okay, some people where your private collection, you might find it. So if Bitcoin value is going up, why would I use it for buying pizza or something like that? Right? If I don't use it, then it doesn't gain widespread acceptability. So it's a chicken and egg problem.
Yeah. On that, sorry to keep asking question on that. I'll go back and watch Kevin Kelly's podcast with you. The reason why I ask is it's not about the Bitcoin alone, right? So there are other cryptocurrencies. They value their currency based on which is backed by asset, or they say our cryptocurrency is working on helping the foreign exchange. So how do you differentiate between Bitcoin versus rest of the cryptocurrencies and their valuation to the US dollars? I also understand the irony, right? Irony here. The same people who say that a US dollar is overvalued, they value their cryptocurrency with US dollars.
Right. Again, it doesn't. So what the bottom line comes down to, what is your currency offering related to the US dollar that it is going to hold value better? But that people will say the same for gold, right? I mean, you can say that for so many things. But without gaining acceptability, the value question comes from the secondary point. So first you have to get network acceptability. Only then the value question will come into play. And at the end of the day, the point is governments have enormous power, and governments stand behind the currency, right? And the reason why the dollar is so powerful is because it's the most powerful economy stands behind it. The more powerful government stands behind it. So, the only thing that has really been a long-term asset in that sense is gold, right? Which has had 5,000 years of use or whatever, right? That's why it's there. But even in the case of gold, if you take how it has changed its characteristics since it used to be widely backing the currency, since it stopped backing currencies, its characteristic has changed a lot in terms of how it behaves in crisis, how it behaves in the financial markets and things like that. So people underestimate, rather. I use the word that George W. Bush misspoke, which is misunderestimate, and I like it. It should be made a word. So it underestimate the power of governments and how much that is relevant for the currency. The Bitcoin enthusiasts and others. I'm not saying that it won't take off, but this is a challenge. I mean, it's possible that it takes off. There is a potential for it to take off. But it has to overcome, in my view, first the acceptability, and that can come only through transactions.
Talking about that, do you think that all the economies should be looking forward now to increase their forex reserves, US forex reserves? Because US will always be like the leading currency, dollar would be.
I don't think right now most countries are short of reserves. I think the main ones that have a problem with inadequate reserves are the countries that are in trouble, like Argentina and Turkey. But other than that, India just now crossed $500 billion in reserves. I don't think reserves are a problem. In fact, the rupee is starting to appreciate. So the problems are mostly domestic financial and economic problems. Unlike in the past, so up to the 1991, everybody is aware of, balance of payments. So if you go from 1956, when first India started having currency problems, to 1991, I think out of those 34 years, I think 27 out of those 34 years, India was stressed in the foreign exchange front, okay, and the balance of payments front. 27 out of the 34. That was a different era. I don't think that we are in that era now. Right now, I don't think this is the biggest problem.
Okay. Sir, moving to the next question. This is on the future of entertainment industry. say for example sports. So how it is going to thrive from now? What is your opinion? Because it's very difficult to gather the audience. So we were talking about the no supply in excess, but it's totally opposite in case of sports, right? So it's very difficult to bring the audience to the stadium. That is number one. And we also see like for example the performing arts like Carnatic music, many people are performing it online, but though they are finding it difficult to have a live feel where audience
Mhm.
can respond and connect to the performing artists. So how sports is going to be in the future? I'm not saying that we're not going to play cricket at all, but how it is going to slowly change.
I know it is. This is a tricky one, right? I mean, okay, we are in the optimistic scenario. COVID goes away. We find some vaccine or something that eventually that thing passes, and we go back to the world as it was, right? Mm. In any case, in cricket, I think the majority revenue comes from TV. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure. I think the TV. But I mean, still, the stadium revenue is not zero, especially for IPL. Stadium revenue is significant because the tickets are highly priced and they more or less fully sell out, right? So it is significant and it is important. Um, I My assumption is that if COVID goes away, then people will come back. That's the kind of activity where people will come back. People like that, right? I mean, they like that feel and being in the stadium. And especially for short duration, it's not like 5-day test match, which is not coming back, which even before COVID was dying, right? I can't imagine. When I was growing up, I used to love test match and I used to go at least for 1 day out of 5, whenever it used to be in my city. But even I don't have the time or the patience for sitting through the whole day now. It's hard to do that now. It's a different world, but that was dead anyway. But the 2-3 hour format that is IPL, I think there will always be the demand, and the same with Carnatic music or live concerts. There is something. I'm not a music aficionado. My music knowledge is zero, but my family is pretty good. My wife and my kids, they are. So there is something that you feel. It's not just listening on your radio. That's why they want to go to the concert. So I think those will come back. But COVID has to go away. If COVID doesn't go away, then all bets are off.
Yes, sir.
Also, yeah, we also see that most of the movies and all these things comes in the OTT
Mhm.
platform, right? So that will also have, I think, will have some impact after the post-COVID.
Yes,
How do you
I
think?
think in the movies, uh, the movies had moved to this. The movies have been facing this challenge ever since VCR came, right? VCR and TV came. They have been facing this challenge with trying to get. But what they were able to do is to go to the multiplex and create these lot of sci-fi and lot of effects which can be best enjoyed in a theater, right? So if you still want to see Star Wars, something like that, you want to go to the theater to see it, right, to some extent. Now, the kind of things that which will clearly move towards the small screen away from the theater is the more drama-oriented stuff, which you can much more enjoy from home, right? And I think that is certainly going to happen, and you're seeing far better quality. One thing, if you look at what Amazon Prime and what Netflix are producing, especially in India, I'm saying the quality is just terrific, right? I mean, it's really good. I think there will be challenge. I think movie will be more niche, not niche, but you will see these huge blockbusters which have to be seen on screen with big marquee names. The others will be in the OTT platform. I think that's where we will move. I think.
Now, I think from producers, now OTT platform has become the drivers for this entertainment industry. Previously, it
Right.
used to be the producers. Now they are driving. They are fixing the price, probably.
Right.
Okay. So one last question before we close. I hope it is okay.
Yeah.
A quick talk about Europe. Europe's migration crisis, its age problem, and how is it going to be? European Union as such, is it going to survive?
So I don't know enough about the migration crisis, to be honest. I mean, I can't answer that with any great deal of, but to the extent this pressure will remain in Europe, because Europe is bordering those areas where there is going to be severe problems. And there is already severe problems. There is going to be more severe problems in the years to come. Because with oil prices crashing, I just saw the crashing. If you look at I just saw the news about Kuwait running out of money. So you're going to see a lot more turmoil in the Middle East, and you will see a lot more turmoil continuing turmoil in Africa as well. Right? So there will be pressure. The migration pressure in Europe will be there. Okay, how they deal with it, I don't know enough about the ground reality to give an honest answer. Insofar as the European Union is concerned, I will honestly say that I was always a skeptic. I remain a skeptic. That said, I have been surprised by how much resilience and durability they have shown. I think they are really committed to the European project, especially France and Germany. I have been surprised by how much unity there is. And that's really what matters, because they are the heart of Europe. Right? And as long as that collaboration remains strong, the European project remains strong. And I can say this, that I have been a skeptic, and I remain a skeptic, and yet I think they have defied the skeptics. So I would think one should not, given how much they have. I think there are a lot of challenges still, but I think that the challenges come from the fact, apart from the migrant crisis, from the old age and having to aging society and having to meet the social security requirements, those kind of things in an aging society. Those challenges are there. But I wouldn't put it past them to be able to manage it. If they have managed it so far, they've done a very good job, I would say. So I wouldn't discount that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, sir. Anand, do you have any other questions to ask to Srini?
Not really. I think I was just thinking about the tourism industry in Europe. I think that will also come up, right? Better, I think, after this post-COVID period. I think.
Yes. If COVID goes away, this will come back. See, the thing is, it's an attractive place. People will want to go there. It's very tourist friendly also, unlike the US, in the sense that it's not large distances that you have to travel by car. It's inconvenient and all that stuff, right? Once you get there, it's walk friendly, public transportation friendly, all that stuff, and it's got real feel and ambience. There is culture. Then people will always want to be there. So it will. So again, we are making an assumption that COVID is eventually going to go away, maybe a year, something like that. It's just going to be a distant memory after that. And then I think some of these things are certainly going to come back. Things that won't come back are people going out shopping. I don't think it'll ever come back to where it was.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's all hope for the quick vaccinations and that would bring back the economy to normal.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Srini. Thanks for your time.
Pleasure.
It's been an honor hosting you always in our shows. We look forward to have more such talks and more interesting discussions in the future too. So if you let me, I will close the show with a Shanti Mantra. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Srini.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye.